Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel, broadcasting from my office in Moriarty, New Mexico. And Dennis Burgess is broadcasting the show and producing the show from St. Louis, Missouri. Dennis, you out there?
Yep, I am here.
Yeah, so like we always do, what's the weather like out there? Here it's sunny and relatively dry. Things are kind of really slow here in New Mexico, so slow that I went out and borrowed my landlord's lawnmower and mowed all the weeds from all the wonderful rain we've gotten. Just trying to do something to keep myself from going stir crazy.
Gotcha.
I'm really blessed with a network that operates like it should. Just really pleased with that. But other than that, this afternoon's supposed to be some rain clouds and the light coming in. Hopefully no lightning, and get right through that problem. What's it like out in your neck of the woods?
Well, you know what? We had some rain. What was it? Yesterday, actually. We had some rain that came through. That wasn't a big deal. Actually, we needed the rain. My grass, I need to cut it already. But then we also had, let's see here. We also had, once the rain went through, though, it cleared up and all the humidity dried up really good. So right now we are at about,
maybe.
What was that?
Do we have some technical difficulty, or is it on my end?
Must be on your end.
Okay.
Yep. But no, we actually have cooled down. We have like a high of 80 today, and we're supposed to have that for like a week, like 5 days. So hopefully it's really nice.
So any news in the industry out there? It sounds like it's pretty mundane, not much going on.
Well, Microtech is releasing their new 60 gigahertz product. It is a 1 gig full duplex link. I do not know the cost of that yet. It has hit the FCC already, so that's always interesting. But that's about it. Wispapalooza is coming up.
Factor of a lighthead grid, right?
Yep. Very small.
Good for about 50 feet.
They're saying about 600 meters. So I think we're getting some noise from Ryan. Ryan, can you mute yourself there?
Well, I can't barely hear you. I don't know if it's on my end or not, Dennis, but we've got on the show today, as you know, this is a trade show, radio show, and part of the thing is about business that we do. And with that, I'm pleased to bring in Ryan Keeley with Unitel. He's a risk advisor for them, and what they do is insurance for WISPs. They got involved in our specific industry. To have him on.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Morning. So tell us a little bit about Unitel and a little bit about yourself, and how you guys started and where you got the interest of helping serve our niche industry.
Sure. Now, like I mentioned to you before, we have our team's been working with ILEX, CLEX, cellulars, cable TV, internet companies for decades, and we just saw a lot of those companies migrating into the same types of delivery as the WISPs, and some of them have actually been members as well of the association. So that's how it brought us on our radar. So joined the association. There's a lot of folks that, much like yourself and other members, that just not sure where to go, what to do. We've got our team, about 14 of us on the Unitel side. Unitel is a division of Unico Group. It's our larger company based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. We've about 130, 140 employees out there total. And then the rest of us on the Unitel side, we're kind of spread around. So we've got myself and one counterpart. We're here in Indianapolis area. Got one gentleman in Minnesota. You got out in Utah, a few in Colorado, obviously a number there in Nebraska as well.
Gotcha. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in the industry.
I started doing insurance. I got into that about a few years out of college, and I've been working just communications related exclusively for about 15 years now. So that's pretty much all I do versus the business down on Main Street or anything else. So just telephone, cable, internet is what I know. I try to focus on.
So what exactly does Unitel cover? I mean, I've got a hodgepodge currently of providers for my insurance needs, and it'd be nice to find a company that does know my industry and
Sure.
can provide me, one, with savings, and two, prevent me from being sued to oblivion should some occurrence happen. What exactly does Unitel do for the WISP industry?
Sure. We've got a couple of exclusive arrangements with some carriers where products are built specifically for the industry. And those can be package policies to encompass your property, liability, the auto, crime, employee theft, that is. Add an umbrella. We can add in directors and officers, including employment practices liability if needed. Adding in workers' compensation. That seems to be an issue for a lot of WISPs. And cyber liability as well. That's an interest. So again, a couple of different carriers do especially policies, and then we'll sprinkle in, obviously, depending on the needs and the risk, we'll go out to some different markets to pull in the different things. But we try to keep it as simple as we can, like you said, versus a hodgepodge.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, in the financial side of our businesses, people don't really understand what we do, but there's a few people out there that do, and when we find them, we really glom onto them. And it sounds like Unitel understands the WISP market. Would you agree?
I would hope so. I'd like to agree. It's nice. I think we saw a lot of refreshed faces, even when we were at WISPapalooza last year, to start talking to folks, even people we've talked to on the phone, that we understand what equipment you're using, the type of delivery, the acronyms that you use. We speak the same language. We understand it. So you're not teaching someone what your business is and what you do versus them trying to figure out how to cover you best. We already understand that aspect, and so we'll take that to find the right coverage for your particular company.
Okay. So you mentioned a bunch of companies that you represent. I mean, is Unitel the actual insurer, or is it you guys put together a unified quote of a bunch of other companies? Do you shop the best for the client? How does that all work? Or is Unitel the insurer total?
We're not actually the insurer, no. We're more of a brokerage agency. We're actually the largest agency, private agency that writes communication companies. We work with over 650 across the country. So we'll broker that out, whether it's through some of the specialty carriers, some of the nationally ones that people have heard of, whether it's a Hartford, Travelers, Chubb, Philadelphia, and the like. Just depends on really what the risk is, what needs the client has, and what's going to be the best fit overall.
Okay. You have any stories of issues like the other insurance companies we see on TV? We've seen that. Tell us some stories about what you've seen and how you've helped out your client base.
As far as what we've seen, gosh, over the years, you see a lot. You refer to those commercials on TV. Yep, there's definitely some odd things when the claims come in. You wonder how such a thing happened. Things happen, whether it's lightning, that's in your industry a lot of. We're seeing people getting into fiber. They're curious can I cover that fiber? Absolutely. Yes, whether it's underground or overhead. Even the towers. That's not an issue. Towers typically, the biggest issue for them is lightning and tornadoes. So we've had cell towers. I've seen pictures of them wrapped in, crumpled up and on the ground. And it's not a cheap venture, especially when you're dealing with a few 100-foot tower. But we're able to get those put back and taken care of as best we can, and make sure it's done. You guys can get it done as quickly as possible, so you're back in business. That's the
Right,
most
that's the
important.
whole point. How long did it take for that tower that you saw crumpled up into a pile back into being in operation? Do you know?
I've seen a few, but that one I believe about a month and a half.
Gotcha. From initial claim to back in production.
Yep.
Well, that's not too bad.
No, not really. Not what we do with a taller tower. That's fundamental for a cellular operation.
Probably took a lot longer to even build the original tower.
Probably, I'm sure it did. Yes.
So I got a question for you. You know, a lot of these insurance policies that I see anyway, they do not cover, quote, acts of God. Now, how do you cover acts of God? A flood, a lightning strike, that type of stuff?
Well, flood, a lightning strike. Obviously, that's the most prevalent with the industry. And that you consider that an act of God, but it is a storm damage. So whether it's wind or lightning and the like, that's all part of that. Flood, some of the specialty policies, we've got some built in for flood. That's more built in for lower risks outside the 500-year floodplain. Once you get within that and you're built within, that's a different policy you'd obtain through FEMA. We can assist with that as well.
Okay, so you do offer lightning protection. So I got 2 buy cells and a couple microtechs up on a tower, and they get struck by lightning. Who pay? All that gear is toast, and it has to be replaced. Now I can replace it, but do we file a claim with you guys, and you guys pay for that, or how does that work?
I've seen plenty of lightning, and we've talked to our clients mostly a lot about grounding those towers, grounding your equipment as best you can. Ultimately, sure, when you get a direct strike on that equipment, there's not a whole lot you guys can do, and you're well aware of that.
Right.
But yes, it depends on the equipment. Sometimes your equipment cost that's damaged isn't going to exceed a deductible of $1,000 or more, depending on what you choose. So if you've got some higher dollar equipment up there, absolutely, I've seen losses like that.
Gotcha. Well, there you go. So,
yeah, that kind of makes sense. Your lower cost gear may not lump into that because it would never meet the threshold for your deductible. But if you got a SAF link, I mean, when I bought my SAF link with a lease, I was required to have this, and I'm glad I did because we did take some lightning damage. So lightning is included in the clause, and that's obviously an act of God, but you include it in the coverage. And of course you tell people, ground, and I'm glad that you mentioned, all bets are off when lightning directly strikes stuff. It just eliminates stuff. No amount of grounding is not going to save anything. But what would you say is, since you cover lightning, and that is an act of God, what would you say is an act of God that would not be covered? And have you seen the insurers with, send out an adjuster to look at the grounding because a lot of it, insurance companies love to take your money, but then again, they hate to pay it out. Sure. How many have been denied lightning protection and send out an adjuster because one bolt wasn't tight?
No, I don't see that at all, actually.
Okay.
From that standpoint, no. And if, when it's a significant claim, if it comes down to my clients are having issues, I'll be on the phone with the claims adjusters directly and working on their behalf. Absolutely. But no, I really don't see them going out nitpicking saying you're short on grounding here. That's not a requirement of coverage.
Okay.
Just as far as when it's damaged and it's covered, you've got it on the property side, they'll take care of it. We've not really had much issues. So it's been fortunate.
Good. But anyways, back to that question, what would be considered an act of God other than the things that, we know are acts of God? But, I mean, Dennis threw out there flood and lightning, but what else? Wind?
We see wind, we see tornadoes, ice storms. Those are pretty detrimental. And had claims from all of the above.
Okay.
As far as act of God that is not covered, you kind of got me at a loss here.
How about like war and riot and stuff like that? Is that part of the...
That's excluded on pretty much every policy. Yep.
Excluded?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Very standard.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happened? So I'm just trying to think about what would be excluded. And, you just kind of said war and what was the other one?
Riot.
Riot. I mean, if somebody vandalizes your tower, that would be covered. But if it was a riot and they vandalized your tower, it wouldn't be?
If they're deeming it to be a riot, yeah, they can. It's just different. I've seen a number of vandalism claims to towers, in fact. And it's slowed down now. We did see a lot of it more when metal prices were high. We would see people cut the fence, break into the tower building, steal the copper grounding rods, and do a lot of damage for a little bit of copper. And we saw a lot of that, even breaking into people's yards, their equipment yards, where they've got reels of cable, and trying to steal that to burn off the insulation to steal the copper. So, some of them had resorted to spray painting on the cable reels that it's fiber, trying to read terms. It's just glass inside. It's not copper.
Yeah. We've seen that where thieves will have dug up and pulled up this huge section of of fiber. I remember a while back we had a customer that they had ran aerial fiber, and these guys took like 6 poles worth of fiber, and they cut it at each end, and they rolled it up, and then they took off with it, thinking, oh, we're going to get a crap load of money because they thought it was power wire, and there's nothing in it but glass, and other than a little bit of the hanging cable, that stuff. But definitely an interesting business to be in those particular cases.
Dennis's story would be covered under vandalism.
I've seen some of those where they've dropped spans of cable. Absolutely, in the overhead. The downside overhead, a lot of times the coverage is built in for catastrophic, being an ice storm, a tornado, and things like that. So it carries a higher deductible. The nicer things about the underground for folks in parts of the country, even where you're at, both of you gentlemen, Missouri or New Mexico, where you can bury a majority of it, that has a much lower deductible, and we do see losses with that yet too. We've seen lightning hit a pedestal, travel down, and damage a bunch of fiber. So
it actually damaged the fiber. The heat melted the glass.
Absolutely, and had to be that run had to be replaced.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we here in Missouri, we in Jefferson County, we export, our chief export is rock. So we actually do not get as much buried fiber as people would think. Whenever you go outside of our county into more agricultural and southern Missouri, then we get a lot more buried fiber. And don't get me wrong, we do have buried fiber. It's just extremely expensive because of the amount of rock that we have here. I guarantee you I could go out in our 5 acres, and pretty much every place I dig, I'd hit a rock. It is what it is. We're right on a shelf that we have a lot of exposed rock, so we don't actually get that much buried fiber. All of our fiber is aerial for the most part, so it is what it is, So.
Well, here's a question. Recently out here in New Mexico, we had a microburst that wiped out the co-ops, about 5 of their distribution poles, and brought power down for a while, and then that same microburst wiped out about 12 to 18 of their transmission lines. And if I was on that pole and it got snapped and everything, I'm on the co-op's pole. I have right away on their pole. If I was, of course they don't let us on there, but if I was, would that kind of event be covered even though it's not on my pole infrastructure?
If there's damage to your equipment or your property, then yes, you will be covered. You need damage to your property is what it comes down to.
Yeah. So
in other words, in this case, I wouldn't be going after the co-op's insurance.
A lot of times, no.
Okay.
It depends how your pole attachment agreement is going to read as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but normally,
Dennis, you had something?
Normally, your insurance would cover your fiber that's on the pole, and my assumption is the installation, the fixing of that, the time, the material, all that kind of good stuff. Correct.
Correct.
But they would have to come, just like anybody else. They would have to sit there, and the co-op would have to replace their poles. then they'd have to tell you that, hey, our poles are replaced now. Now you can actually fix your fiber and reattach. And your time and your effort and all that kind of good stuff is valuable. So, of course, that time should be billed. And if you are going to file a claim, then you would include that into that claim. That way you have that. So,
Right.
gotcha. So let me ask this question: how do you
Sure.
base your pricing off both wireless and wired infrastructure? I mean, is there a common pricing? Again, I have a tower that has 2 buy cells and 4 microtechs. Let's just say, okay.
Okay.
What would that cost me to insure on a monthly basis and on a yearly basis?
There's a lot of variables that come into play, and it's a question I get. I've heard plenty. Is, can you give me an idea on what my insurance is going to cost? And there are a lot of variables. When you're talking about the property itself, we're wanting to look at what's the replacement cost of that property. So we'll have to determine what is the replacement cost. Your equipment, do you own the structure? Do you own that tower? We'll need to know what that tower costs to replace. You're going to add in a lot of other factors, all of the property, and it's lumped together. So it's a blanket limit, and it will be rated accordingly, depending upon, obviously, is it a tower, piece of tower equipment? Is it a building, that little 10 by 10 concrete building that's pretty indestructible at the bottom?
Right.
And these different rates, but they're rated together. So it's not an easy answer to give. I've been able to try to ballpark some things, but again, it varies. When you're looking at a whole company as a whole.
Right. Let's just say I just installed a tower and it cost me $22,000 to place the gear, install my equipment box, and place the gear on the tower. It cost me $22,000. That does not include electrical service. That does not include. That is my hard cost of equipment, cable, and cabling on that tower. So
not the tower.
Not the tower.
Concrete in the ground.
All I care about is if lightning strikes it, etc. And that $22,000 included my backhaul, included everything that I needed to make that work. So, with that said, is there a roundabout number that you can get? A guesstimate of how much it would cost me to insure that tower on a yearly and a monthly basis?
Again, it's a very difficult question to try to pin down exactly what a rate is. It varies part of the country. It varies, again, with the equipment as well. If you're looking at a ballpark, say on $25,000 of equipment, even if you're looking at a couple $100 a year, plus or minus, definitely.
Okay.
So
I mean, I didn't know if it was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be $500 a month, or if it was going to be $100 a month, or if is it going to be $500 a year. I mean,
right.
that's my question is, if it's $500 a year, then it's a no-brainer for me to say, hey, I want to insure my $25,000 for $500 a year. But if it's going to be $10,000 a year, I mean, I understand that you have to sit there and it's your job to make money, but in the end, nobody wants a lightning strike or nobody wants vandalism, etc. But that's the whole point of insurance. So,
sure.
Well,
it's with any of your insurance. I mean, you're dealing with your risk as a company owner, Steve. You're dealing with whether it's you have that risk. You have a few things you can do with it. You can retain that risk yourself and self-insure. You can avoid the risk and not put any equipment up on towers at all, which can be a little difficult for you.
Yeah.
Or you can transfer risk using insurance.
Right.
And it's a matter of, like you said, a cost benefit.
Gotcha.
What is it? Is it going to be in my benefit to insure that equipment on the towers and the towers themselves, or is it beneficial for me to self-insure those?
Let me ask this question. So
Sure.
this is actually a really good question. So we have a new tower that is put up. Now, we do not own the tower, okay? It's actually a government agency that owns it. I have $22,000 of equipment on it, okay? What happens if that tower is destroyed, falls, something like that? I don't care, a tornado, whatever. Do you insure? Obviously, you insure my equipment, but what about the lost revenue from that tower? So
Yeah,
let's say
good
I was getting $5,800 a month in revenue off that tower. Is that something that you would insure, or is
Absolutely.
so?
Absolutely. That's part of that we build in with our packages, whether it's a loss of income, extra expense that goes right along with property losses.
Okay.
So, for example, in that large tower loss that we'd had, you had a significant expense just to replace that tower itself. But then you had a lot of extra overtime to expedite and overnight the equipment, the people, the overtime to get those things back in place as quickly as possible. And yes, if there's lost revenue, those are tough pieces to tough claims to handle from our claims team, but they've definitely handled them before.
Okay. So if I had $5,000 worth of income, you would replace that on a monthly basis until that tower was rebuilt, and then until my equipment could be replaced up on that tower.
They'd be looking at your financials to determine what your true loss was, and not because you're not meant to profit from a loss. They're really looking at what was your out-of-pocket loss. So you to make you whole, not to have you profit from it. Unfortunately, sorry guys, but if we get you back to it.
So that kind of raises me another question. That how do you determine my profit on it? I mean, that is part of every customer has some type of profit built into it, I guess.
Sure.
So if I'm getting $5,000 worth of income from that tower, and 10% of that goes towards equipment costs that the customer has a contract with, that's assuming the customer is going to stay with me while the 2 months that the tower is down, which may or may not happen. I mean, they may need something else, so they may sign with somebody else. So I definitely
we've seen those claims, and that's where the adjusters come in. They look at what were your revenues, your customers, your lost customers for that matter, and that's where that loss of income and extra expense piece comes right into. As far as how exactly they do that, I'm not a claims adjuster. I can't speak to that.
Gotcha. Well, no, I mean it's just, I can you not build in? So can you build in the tower equipment costs, but not the loss of revenue
to make your insurance cheaper?
No, it's automatically built in.
Okay. All right. So I mean, I didn't know. I mean, if I'm getting $10,000 a month from that tower, and it costs me, $800 or $1,000 to service,
Sure.
I'm not sitting there stating that I need that, but that is, it would be cheaper to just insure the equipment versus insure the equipment and the loss of revenue.
Right, and that's where we'll encourage a lot of people to have the coverage for their structure and equipment, simply because then it pulls along with it that extra expense, loss of revenue, and the like.
Gotcha.
That's
right.
great.
Even an inexpensive tower versus self-insuring it, where there's no coverage on that. If there's no coverage on the property, you lose the debris removal to basically clean up the mess if a tornado did take it out.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
with the clients we've been working with, I will say it's not everyone will insure their equipment on the towers, and it varies from company to company what's best for them.
gotcha.
So, and if your dollars aren't that high, and you don't feel that you're going to even have a potential claim, you don't have a lot of $1,000 or $2,000 up on each tower, then maybe it's not beneficial.
Gotcha.
If you're starting to increase your dollars and move into LTE, and you have a lot of higher dollar equipment up on those towers, then it makes more sense.
Gotcha. All right.
And it comes down to personal preference. We just build it accordingly.
Well, Dennis brought up a good point, and I wanted to just expand on it a little bit. And I think you probably answered it with my, fiber being on the right of way of a co-op. So say Dennis's equipment's on a utility or a government agency, and we know that they put up stuff really good.
Yeah.
And it falls down at no fault to Dennis, and it breaks all of his stuff. You guys will cover that, and it's probably outside of our scope of whether we care or not. Would they go after the entity that owns the tower for putting it up slipshod?
Depends on why it fell over. If there's negligence on that other party, yes, they'll try to subrogate.
Really good.
If it's
now, I want to get into mundane of business, talk about workman's comp. Like I'm insured with, I think it's CNA or something like that.
Okay.
And so I've got you hunting down my total insurance package, and I'm with CNA now. And say you solicit CNA for my business, and you come up with a cheaper deal. Have you ever seen that? Does that ever? I mean, because you are a broker and you approach my current insurer, and they're able to come up with a cheaper deal. Have you seen that? And what's the reason for my cheaper deal?
Usually, no. If you're already with one particular carrier, CNA, for example, I would not be able to approach them up for your business because it's already placed there. So, as far as getting a better deal from the same company, no, that's not really
how that works. But you would solicit these other companies to find me a better deal. That's what the broker.
If I could, sure. And it's been tricky with work comp, and no different with telcos and cellulars with the WISPs, because you've got, depending on what your operations are, the folks that are have people climbing towers. That's a tougher risk to place. I heard it a lot last October. I've heard it since. That was one of the other tough issues. And we've seen some folks that their work comp gets with the state pool because there's no other place to possibly take them. It's the carrier of last resort. So they'll end up being there. We've been able to help some people out and move them from there. And one, you're getting with a standard carrier, maybe some better loss control. And two, definitely some other times we're able to save some money for that client.
So have you seen lessening and less fear from the insurance companies on tower work to where, you can actually do my workman's comp?
Some of them, yes. Some of them, they're still hesitant. We've got agreements with some as far as they understand because of the volume we work with. They know what kind of risks we're bringing to the table. And so versus maybe your guy, some guy down the street from you, maybe just bringing a one-off telco or WISP bringing in there, that carrier, that region may not understand.
The answer would be no.
A lot of times it is. So for some of these carriers, we have dedicated underwriters, and all they do is our telco business. So I can send them a risk. They don't have to ask me 50 questions because they know what I'm bringing to them.
Right, you've kind of vetted it. Mm-hmm. So let's go about, you reached out to me a while back, and I was interested in the product you have, and you sent me the stuff you need, and I have to say I'm sorry I haven't gotten to you, but things have slowed down quite a bit to where I can start putting that together for you, so you'll be getting that. Go into, if someone out there is interested in your products and your services that you offer, and it sounds like an all-in-one place to get your insurance, and it sounds like a good deal to me. What's the time that a small business owner such as myself would be involved in putting together, and what do I have to put together to get the ball rolling with you guys?
Well, the information I'd sent to yourself and to anyone that we've worked with or would work with, I sent a spreadsheet. It's got different tabs for general information, your property, your autos, the drivers included. Wanting to know, do you need an umbrella? Do you have to have one based on tower lease agreements? Do you just want one based on your risk? Sometimes I've got an ISP questionnaire. I'll send along a separate couple-page deal for the workers' compensation. And then if you want other coverages, then there's going to be more information needed. If you're looking for the cyber liability, that's a little more involved. If you're looking for the director's officers and employment practices piece, that's in a different application. If you're needing any bonds for pole attachment agreements, that's separate as well. It just really comes down to what you need as a company as to what will request information or will request. We always try to keep it as simple as we can, right, while still gathering necessary information.
Right. Getting the basics, and I mean, just the basics. A small operator like myself, 500 people. What could a person expect as in time of filling out all that stuff? I know that you asked for like a P&L and a balance sheet and such. What other forms? I mean, other than your application, will the business owner have to come up with to get the ball rolling for you guys to be able to make an informed decision?
Sure. That spreadsheet with all basically the nuts and bolts of your operation, the P&L, more so a balance sheet income statement than a P&L.
Okay.
And the loss history from your current carriers is really important.
How would a person be able to go get that, or would I give you the account number and you go do that research?
You would have to obtain that yourself, either one of two ways: through your current agent or contacting your current carrier directly. They would be able to supply you with that loss history. We've had a number that have said, I've never had a loss in all my years I've been in business. And in that respect, we've been able to work with our carriers to get them to give us an indication or a pricing subject to additional documentation, which allows some people to say, okay, it gives me a little more time to make an informed decision, as long as you're giving us the additional or the other pieces we're looking for.
Gotcha.
Again, try to keep it as simple as we can.
Right, and us small business, single owner operations appreciate that. You mentioned cyber liability. What's that all about?
Well, a typical liability policy doesn't include coverage for the cyber piece, as it's referred to, or technology errors and omissions. Errors and omissions is different than just a general liability. So if you've got customer information, credit cards, names, addresses, social security numbers, or a glitch that's hacked from your system, or there's another glitch in your system, those things are not typically covered as part of a general liability. So that's a coverage a lot of times starts to get added as the company grows and is medium to larger size. We don't see it on a lot of real small companies being added, but it definitely can be, just because of a cost factor.
So that basically covers in-house servers that could be hacked and information compromised.
Absolutely. People are suing you for glitch in your system. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
There you go.
Well, Dennis, you got any other questions? A lot of good ones you threw out there.
No, I think he's answered all my questions, so I think we're pretty good on my questions anyway. I can check our radio show here, see if we got anything. Let me take a look here.
Sorry about that.
Yep, I do not see any questions. Yeah, I don't see any questions. So Ryan,
Ryan, you're going to be available at Wispapalooza, correct?
I will be. My counterpart and I from this office will be both there. Have a booth in the exhibit hall. I'll be there. I think I fly in Monday, and I'm out Thursday night. But definitely open to sit down with some folks if they have some other questions. Trying to see some other people just to bring in their insurance policy, have me do a review. That's one thing we do a lot of, looking at what is your current coverage? What sorts of things maybe you would be missing that you're not aware of? Or how can we benefit things? With these specialty policies, one of the benefits I've been seeing for the growing list, for that matter, is the way the auto is written. The auto is done on a fleet basis, and it's not audited. So a lot of your policies are audited, whether it's general liability or your auto. And the auto's done, they're just any and all autos are covered. So if you add an auto 3 months into your policy period, we endorse the policy, and there's been no additional charge for that vehicle addition. And it's always funny to see people that don't believe that it's true until I tell them, no, it really is, and I send them an ID card and no bill. So
wow,
it's been fun to see. So for a growing company, that's definitely a benefit that I see.
Yeah.
A lot of the established ILEX, CLEX we've worked with for decades, they're not adding, 1, 2, 3 vehicles every year. They're not. They're pretty standard as far as their size. But a growing WISP has been seeing. Some of us have been seeing the benefit. It's been nice. Again, a lot of the pieces I kept hearing last year and continually are the work comp issues. What do I do about my fiber? And how do can I cover the towers or equipment? So all things that we've been dealing with for years and is not an issue.
That brings up another point. I've ventured into fiber optics myself, and I'm doing the construction end of my own. You guys obviously have and done before and can it be competitive, be ensuring the construction process? If I strike a gas line, heaven forbid, and the gas company's all over my case and they want to sue me and all that stuff.
Yeah, there goes 30,000 real quick.
Is there a policy out there for me for construction?
The question I ask people in that instance, like yourself, Steve, is: are you doing that construction just for your own network and your own company?
In this case, yes.
Most of the time, the answer is yes. And in that case, that's just part of your general liability.
Okay.
We'll look at that overall. I've seen, I don't know how many photos of whether it's copper or fiber running right through a sewer or water line in somebody's front yard or through the street. I've seen a lot of that. So it happens. But yes, you locate, and yes, you call the people you need to. Sometimes things happen. And we'll work with you. We work with our clients and advise them, even with doing the work yourself, or if you're subcontracting it out. And at that point, then you're looking more so, how do I protect myself from that sub if something terrible happens? They hit a gas line, or water, or something, explosions happen, things like that.
Well, I've invested quite a bit of money into the equipment to get to where I can actually do this efficiently. And it sits there, and I've got some projects on hold, and I got gear sitting there, and I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs. Is there a policy that would, if I went out and subcontracted to a contractor that wanted to run a water line? Say I take my directional drill out to a property and run a water line, and it's all spotted and everything, except the telephone company didn't tell me because he didn't know it wasn't there, because his spotter didn't find it, and I hit it. Is there something in there for that kind of situation? Because by and large, I'm doing all my own work for myself, like you explained. But if I've got someone else that wants to utilize it and I can help them out, can this insurance help me in a situation where I would be a subcontractor to a plumber or to a utility or what have you?
We've seen it done. I will say it's definitely discouraged because that's not your expertise.
Okay.
So
yeah, they would typically
when clients start doing that, the carriers will encourage a policy for that type of thing to be written separate.
Okay.
It's not really meant for a communications type company that they're running water lines or sewer lines or things like that.
Right. Yeah. But in reality, it is, because you're just pulling in the same pipe.
Right.
And they fill the pipe with whatever they want.
Yep.
Yeah, but the normal aspect is that you would normally run your fiber with your directional bore. If somebody else wished to rent that directional bore and wish to install stuff with it, and it doesn't matter what they're installing, they would typically need their own insurance for that said work. Because just because they're renting the equipment from you does not necessarily mean that you are liable for how they are running it. However, what I would actually more think of is your insurance should have a renter clause. Because what happens if they are drilling and they hit a 5,000 watt underground power wire that fries your machine? You see what I'm saying? Now, you weren't doing the work, so your normal liability insurance or your normal general insurance wouldn't cover it because you were not operating that machine. It was a third party. So you would need to have renter's insurance or something similar. I'm sure Ryan can tell us exactly what that is, but that would be more of my concern with lending that piece of equipment out than them hitting a gas line. They should have their insurance for that because they're running it. But I would definitely be more worried about your machine than anything.
Would you agree, Ryan?
Well, in those instances, it's no different than you leasing a piece of equipment from a different company down in the corner that has a bunch of backhoes or whatever. You're putting at least basically a rental agreement with that other person, requiring a certificate of insurance, requiring additional insured, requiring the other different language that you should be, and making sure they've got the proper coverage. So if they do damage or completely destroy your equipment, you will be reimbursed.
Right.
Yeah. So
I have one more question. And it's regards into an affiliate or a contract employee that I have, and we've been bantering back and forth because his annual contract's up. He's been installing services for me in a city 50 miles away, and it's worked out really well. And in my agreement, I said in the first year I'll cover you under my own insurance, but thereafter you got to go shop for your own. Is it feasible for that one person to do that, and he's not making a whole pile of money, recurring revenue from what he's installed? Is it feasible for him to get a policy that would protect me? And these homes, $300,000-$400,000. Is it possible that he could go out and get that for something that's reasonable, like either an umbrella or some general liability, and he doesn't have a business?
If he would have to set it up as a business.
Okay.
More so. But he's more of a one person doing installs and things for you. Is that correct?
Right. And it's pure contract. I don't tell him what to do. He goes out and does what he wants, and he builds it as fast as he wants or as slow as he wants.
Sure.
I just provide him the infrastructure.
You treat him no different than you treat any other contractor in your requirements, as far as limits and different things you would require from them.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I don't know if he would be covered underneath your insurance unless it was specifically wrote in, because he is technically being paid as a subcontractor. Therefore, he technically does not work for you.
Correct.
Right. He's not an employee. He's not an insured.
Right.
So he would not be covered unless my policy precluded that.
Correct. He
And
would
it-
not be covered under your policy.
And it would be
Okay.
it'd have to be very specific to state that your policy is also going to cover the actions of this person or something like that.
And with the workers' compensation, you want to make sure there's a clear line there as well.
But yeah, I mean, even if he's just
Inevitably, it doesn't matter if something terrible happens, and even if you just hired a sub, more often than not, you get named anyhow.
Yeah, they spread a wide net.
Yeah, we've seen that with towers, where a company will hire someone to do tower maintenance or equipment installation, and somebody falls off the tower and dies. Our client still usually gets named. So it still costs a fair penny just out of defense, just to keep defending our client for and get you out of that suit.
yeah.
So that's what's really important from a risk management standpoint on your side, when you are having people do work that's potentially riskier, to have those safeguards in place.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Alrighty. I think we've. I'm gonna check my radio show, but I do not see anything else on the radio show. Any other questions or anything like that? So I think we're pretty good.
So Ryan, if people are interested in the services you offer, and I'm going to call it herding cats, trying to find the best deal for the client, how do they get a hold of you, and how do people communicate with you?
Our website is Unitel-Insurance.com. It's part of Unico Group. You can reach myself if you want me to give you a phone number, email address. I'm happy to share that.
Sure, go ahead.
Phone number for myself, our office here is 317-844-5173. And really simply for this office, is just the email is office@Unitelinsurance.com.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about something no one likes to pay money for, but they're sure as heck glad they got it when there is a problem.
Yep.
And we look forward to seeing you at Wispapalooza. And anything else, Dennis? Other than that, I think we're pretty good.
No. I just tossed up the Unitel Insurance.com website. It is up there, up on the the system. Obviously, they have contact us, all that kind of good stuff. There's their phone number, all that kind of good stuff. So hopefully that will we can generate some business for you and at least get some inquiries for you. But otherwise,
we're happy to help out whoever we can.
Yeah. But otherwise, I think we're really good. We will wrap up the show now. Stephen, you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, well, we got Cambium on the show next week. Talk about their EPMP product and other things that they've got going on. And I want to thank Ryan again for being on the show. Unitel, your one-stop shop for WISP insurance, if you will. They've got a handle on it, and they know our acronyms. Imagine that, a company that knows what we do.
Can they spell
Thanks a lot,
DGT?
guys. You guys have a great week, and see you next week.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.